All right, welcome to the Company Xceleration Podcast, the show where we empower business leaders like you to scale smarter, not harder. I'm your host, JD, and together with our expert coaches, we dive into the tools, strategies, and mindsets that drive sustainable growth and high performing teams. In today's episode, we're tackling something every leader faces. Love them or hate them, meetings can make or break your team's ability to execute. We're here to give you the formula for turning meetings into results-driven powerhouses. If you've ever felt like meetings are wasting time instead of driving progress, then this episode is for you. So joining me today is Dan, one of our acceleration coaches and an expert in building accountability and operational excellence. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, JD. Meetings are such an overlooked tool, but when done right, they're one of the most powerful ways to keep a team aligned and focused. And I'm excited to share how some of those strategies work in meetings.
Awesome. So just jump right into it. So, why most meetings fail. Let's just start by addressing the elephant in the room. Why do meetings fail, and why do so many meetings fail to deliver results?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do struggle, as you said. They either love or hate them. Most probably lean towards the side of not enjoying meetings much, but it comes down to most likely a lack of clear objectives. They don't have clear agendas, or the follow through that comes after the meeting is lacking as well. And a lot of times leaders just don't establish strong boundaries of what it looks like inside of that meeting, and they allow discussions to just completely drift off track, and it feels really unproductive. And so I think without accountability, you fail in meetings because attendees start to disengage, or they leave without clarity on really what is the next step, or what was the outcome of that meeting that we just spent all that time with each other. And I think, the consequences of a poor meeting or a failed meeting are really just time's wasted. Everybody feels like I could have done a lot more with that time that I sat in that meeting. It could lead to a ton of low morale where they're just really tired of going in that same space with those people. Maybe it's bickering, they're off track, and they're getting really annoyed with each other. And so that morale is starting to drop really fast. And also the deadlines that you were hoping to hit as a result of having that big important meeting become a result of missed deadlines because of that ineffective meeting. And so I think those are some of the reasons why meetings fail a lot of times.
Yeah, dead on. Mentioned kind of going back to the leaders themselves. I notice, it doesn't always have to be the leader running the meeting. You can switch and have other people facilitate the meeting, but it is really important that that person is empowered to kind of keep everybody on track. And it's okay to say, hey, we're going off on a tangent. Let's keep focused. We'll go into more details later in the podcast about like maybe how you can do that or why that's necessary. And the idea of, hey, okay, that's maybe a valid kind of point, but we're meandering. Let's kind of take this back and we'll move this component into this part of the meeting.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that you can continue to progress and not be wasting time. You also brought up some other good points, like some of the consequences of, time wasters, these meetings. What happens, in your experience? What have you seen happen when, the meetings are just overall ineffective?
Yeah, like I said, I think you do run into people feeling like they could have utilized that time better. If the meeting is really unstructured, then those interpersonal dynamics that are happening in the meeting become kind of more or less problematic, and so that morale is dropping, and the productivity that you were hoping to achieve is most likely being missed, right? Because they're
Mhm.
effective in general.
Yeah, and you say dropping morale, like another component that I kind of see is when the morale starts to drop, people stop focusing on the problem. They start focusing on the people as the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Communication barriers like just break down. Um, when you actually the barriers go up, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
communication itself, the channels like break down, and the ability to be vulnerable and openly communicate seems to drop.
Yep. Agreed. For
Yeah.
sure.
So let's go ahead and get into the formula, Dan. Like, what makes an effective meeting?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dynamics that make an effective meeting, from checking in at the very beginning. Like, what does that really mean to check in and humanize the meeting and those that are attending? You kind of get into that work mode, and you forget that your coworkers and your direct reports actually do have things that are going on outside of the workplace, and really helps to build relationships and rapport with them when you do a check-in and find out what was the best thing that happened to you in the last week. And then also maybe just dialing in and trying to figure out what did they view as the most successful thing that they did in the work environment as well. So you
Mm,
check in both areas, and that really builds rapport. Headlines
mm,
become really important. You want every department head to give you some type of headline of maybe an amazing customer that came through that loved the product or the service that was being provided. Like one of their department workers who did an amazing job on a project, and these type of headlines that are highlighting staff or customers or those type of things, and maybe even highlighting a potential concern with a vendor or somebody like that, can get the whole team kind of just rallied around what's going on. And maybe when they pass a staff member, they can tell them, great job, I heard you did an amazing job on this project. And so that leadership team or that team that's meeting starts to get a bigger pulse throughout the entire company through headlines. That makes an
mm.
effective meeting.
Yeah.
KPIs become really critical. If you're going to meet, you should talk about measurables. Like, what is making your company tick? What is the black and white that is able to be measured, so everybody sitting around the table has a really concrete understanding of what is driving the company forward? And you want those in your meetings as well, along with what was the thing that we decided to do in the last in these 90 days that we were working towards this quarter? What were our goals? You want to check in on them and find out, are we moving the needle there? To-dos are important. If you had a meeting and you were assigned something to get done, you are accountable to that team. And so you're going to, in the next meeting, talk about what was done and what wasn't done, and how can we remove the obstacles that potentially stopped us from doing that to do.
Mm,
And then the bigger part of a meeting that really becomes important is having all the team members get together and say, what's our current opportunity in front of us, or current opportunities? What are our current obstacles in front of us? And take a big portion of the meeting really bringing these things up. What is opportunities and what are obstacles, so that you can take away to-dos to go capitalize on those areas or solve those.
yeah.
And then the meeting starts to come to a close, and you want to recap everything that was discussed and the to-dos that were assigned, and see if there's any feedback on how can the next meeting be even better. And I think that's what
Right.
makes an effective meeting.
Yeah. So running through that, we start out with the check-in. As you say, it sort of humanizes the
Mhm.
individuals participating in the meeting.
Yep.
Then we move on into the headlines. We talk about, maybe great customer interactions or
Mhm.
wins, um, and maybe even pointing out other team members in the
Mhm.
company and saying, how well they're doing on a particular project or something.
Yep.
And
100%.
again, that allows that human connection, right?
Mhm.
Um, then we move into the KPIs. That's the health of the business.
Mhm.
right? And it shouldn't be 50 KPIs. We need the main ones. What are some of the main ones that are like super important
Yeah,
for
those
the
key
leadership team
yeah,
to focus on?
the key performance indicators, right? Some people
Yeah,
might not know what that KPI stands for. Yeah, what are the key
right.
performance indicators?
Okay. So like revenue,
Mhm.
um, gross profit, maybe churn,
Yep,
customer churn, like the turnover, how many people are coming in versus how many are leaving.
yep.
Um, right. And then we move into the 90-day goals. And as we talked about before, like the tangents and the meandering within the meetings,
Mhm.
you know, it's important that as you're going through some of these, like the check-ins, the headlines, KPIs, and the 90-day goals and the to-dos, you're not taking a huge amount of time. The
No.
90-day goals is, are you on track or off track? It's a
Mhm.
yes or no,
Mhm.
right? And if you're off track, what do you do?
Yep. You're gonna move it to an obstacle or an opportunity to solve, and you're gonna discuss it as a team, and you gotta get that goal back on track 100%, so the team's gonna rally around that team member, and you're gonna solve
Mhm.
it before you end that meeting, so
Right. So this is where the facilitator comes in and says, "Hey, tangent guys, like let's
Mhm.
get back on track. Like that's a valid point. Let's move that into our, opportunities or our obstacles or, we call O and O's, right? In the
Mhm.
Bloom framework. Um, and then after you spend the bulk of the time, as Dan says, on those opportunities and obstacles, like this is where you're going through and really digging to the root of the problem so
Mhm.
that you're not just putting out, fires. We're stopping them from ever happening again, um, and focusing on what moves the needle forward,
Mhm. Yep.
right? And then we move into the recap and assignments, making sure everybody knows clearly based on, the root cause analysis of those O and O's and saying, hey, you're going to take care of this. You're going to take care of this. Everybody's got clarity. And then the feedback. It's also important to talk about, okay, guys, how well did we do on this meeting? Like,
Mhm.
what can we do to improve it? Right.
Yeah.
Um, so, why don't you go ahead and just maybe talk about whether somebody uses our framework or not? Let's talk about some generalities, some basic principles to
Mm.
run an effective meeting.
Yeah, yeah, I think in general, you're gonna want a meeting that has, like, really clear objectives. When you're gonna hold a meeting, it should have a defined purpose. What are we gonna be doing in this meeting? Are we problem solving in this particular area? Are we looking to make a decision in a certain project, or are we just meeting to find out if there's some progress updates? And so I would definitely say, without a doubt, before a meeting is held, every team member needs to know, why are we coming together? What is the clear objective to this meeting? And that way, everybody kind of comes in with a unified front.
Mm,
Um, the other one I would say is create and then stick to to an agenda of some sort. Get an agenda out in front of everybody. Allow them to give maybe some bullet points that need to hit that agenda, that after they know the clear objective of the meeting, they can send in some suggestions and make that agenda really dialed in and going to be beneficial, so that the conversation is focused and everyone feels like they came to the meeting with a shared purpose for that meeting. And then use different tools. Like we have a tool that we call priority pulse meetings, some type of structure inside of your week that you're able to come in and get those weekly updates as well. Other generalities would be assigned roles. We need someone who's leading the meeting. We can't have everybody be the leader. We need people to be able to be stopped and started in conversations. We need people to be told, "Hey, we're getting off topic," and so there needs to be a leader and a defined leader that everybody agrees on. People that are taking notes, because if you're going to meet, there should be value that is coming from that meeting, and you want to capture those in notes and track all the follow up that needs to happen from that meeting. I think time management becomes critical too. Again, Some
Mm,
people really start
absolutely.
to dislike these meetings because they feel like they could be doing things other places. And so if you're going to call a 30-minute meeting, hold a 30-minute meeting. Be really
Right.
dialed in so that they can control their calendar and count on a start and stop time. And I think that's
Right.
really important as well. The the last thing would be if you're gonna meet, come away with something, right? Have a summarization of the discussion that you guys had. Have really clear next steps with deadlines that say, "Hey, you're a team member who said you were gonna do X, and the team think is agreeing that you'll have that done in 7 days or 10 days." So action items at the end of the meeting become super critical. I would say that's the generalities of a meeting that would make it really productive.
Absolutely. That is when you touched on action items,
Mhm,
how important it is that if you're going to call a meeting, it needs to be part of the objective is to walk away with action items.
yep.
If not, don't hold the meeting.
Oh, yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
and you also, number one, start off with clear objectives. Obviously, objective one is to walk away with objectives
Mhm,
after the
mhm,
meeting. But coming to the meeting prepared, that means having gone through your list of to dos from the week before,
mhm,
like having a clear idea of where you are within those tasks. Did you complete them? Is something pending based on, its dependency on something else? And the other idea is like the KPIs or,
mm,
those key performance indicators. Ideally within the company, every person should be assigned to a KPI
yes. Yes,
so
yep,
that before you come to the meeting, you should have already gone through and collected the data that you need so that you can support that KPI that you are responsible for, right?
yes.
Um, can you think of any teams that you've worked with recently where just the meeting alone, mastering the meeting alone, has been, a complete transformation for them?
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of experiences of my own trial and error for sure, with different team members coming together under companies that I've been, fortunate enough to lead. And I feel even though you might know this and you know the value of it, sometimes you get tunnel vision, and entrepreneurship and business ownership can get chaotic sometimes. And that's what having a system really helps you with, is to continue to get clarity inside of that chaotic environment that comes from
Mhm.
business. And so I've had teams where, you're running and you're moving things really fast, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, it's been a month since we've met, and you can tell the team is starting to feel dysfunctional. And you start to come back to the roots of like why meetings are so important, and you see that team completely shift and turn around. I feel like those have been experiences that I've seen multiple times, from the healthcare industry to you know uh, service-based industries like construction, and a couple different types of companies, that it really doesn't matter what industry you're in. The team needs to know the value of meeting, and that's one thing. One team comes to mind is a nonprofit organization who was really struggling from a team dynamic standpoint. And after teaching him this type of meeting structure, within a month, they were coming back with their feedback, just stating that they felt like their meetings were really productive. And it even, and sometimes it's unfortunate, but some team members just can't really get their head around structured meetings, and they end up kind of seeing themselves out of the team because they struggle with that. And that happened in this particular situation as well. But that can be the power of having productive, structured, challenging meetings. Is some You'll see the team members who thrive in that environment, and the team members that didn't. And in this particular organization, they felt the benefit within a month and saw a person exit out of that team, that leadership team, because they were expecting accountability, and that team member didn't want that accountability. So,
That's a very common problem. With these structured meetings where you're focusing on like those high value tasks that really drive the needle.
Mhm.
Um, you know, we'll talk about some other things like the red, green, yellow statuses and things like this, but through the structure, if there's a person that is consistently not producing, it becomes glaringly obvious,
Mhm.
right?
100%.
And
Yep.
time and time again, you see those team members that don't like that spotlight, they're gonna leave,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, one of our
Um,
coaches that, coached us at one point, um, used to refer to it as that they'll smoke themselves out, right? They'll
hmm,
end up smoking themselves out.
yeah, they're just gonna wind up bringing the team down anyway.
Mhm.
Um, and this is something that Matt and I spoke about on another podcast. You know, shaping the team and things, and having clear roles. Um, and by defining the roles, having a clear expectation. What are like the 5 obsessions
Mhm.
of that team member? When you're breaking tasks or projects down into tasks, it becomes clear without even necessarily having to say anything. It becomes clear who's going to cover that,
Mhm.
piece.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and that's another thing that happens through this with the team members, like, oh, like, now the weight's on me, I've got to perform, it's no longer going to hide in the cracks. um and yeah, they'll smoke themselves out, as you say.
Yes.
um so let's talk about some of the tools and frameworks for making
Mhm.
meetings productive. We briefly have talked about our what we call priority pulse meetings, right? This is
Mhm.
your weekly pulse, 90 minutes every single week.
Yep.
Um, so why don't you go through some of these other things that we use?
Yeah, I think with anything you need tools, right? You need framework. I think sometimes that's the simplicity of really what it comes down to running a business and having processes in place is that there's tools that you want at your fingertip that you can pick up every once in a while to remind yourself of what you're trying to do, that are going to be successful at getting the job done. And you want the framework of telling you what you're doing in that particular setting or that process. And so with meetings, you don't just kind of come into a meeting hoping that it's going to be successful, hoping that you're going to be productive. And so, as you mentioned, we want priority pulse meetings. This is a framework that says if we meet within certain time frames consistently every single time each week at the same time, that we can make this meeting much more productive because we're pulsing. We're not forgetting what we talked about last Monday because we're meeting again this Monday and we didn't wait 10 days or 14 days to hold that meeting. And so, a structured framework like priority pulse meetings for weekly check ins, focusing on all those updates of what happened and what obstacles and opportunities are still in front of us that we can either take advantage of or remove, becomes a critical framework. You briefly talked about the stoplight reporting. So using something as simple as red, yellow, and green status updates can quickly highlight, is this priority moving in the right direction? Green, awesome. We're on the right track. Yellow, let's have a conversation. What's going on here so it doesn't go red? And red is, this team needs to get their attention on this and turn it around pretty quick. And I think that's a great tool. If all of your team members know that you're going to use this tool of stoplight reporting, the emotional attachment of that project, if someone were to say, "Hey, it looks to me as if the project is in red status," um, hopefully the response is a lot more positive. Okay, I
Mhm.
see what you're saying there. I hear what you're saying. Let's have a conversation and see where your feeling is and how your perspective is saying red, and maybe we can get it to yellow or green, with me providing some additional information. So that's a tool that allows every team member to move together. I would say also the technology that you're using. What is the
Mm,
tool that is tracking this meeting? Are you on a notepad and you're writing it? Are you moving to real technology that everyone can have in front of them during the meeting together? And that's where software like Bloomgrow software becomes really important. You can see project management, you can see shared dashboards of the action items and all the progress that's being made in real time. And it just really kind of brings the team together really fast. And then you start to work on the business instead of being in the trenches, working in it constantly.
mm. Let- Touch on the some of the benefits of like the Bloom growth software, whether you use that or not. Um, the idea of the visions and values, the plan is it lives in there. What's the value of that?
Yeah, I think the technology brings accountability. I think that's really the huge benefit of it. It brings a sense of transparency as well. Every team member, if you had 5 team members sitting at a table and they're all looking at the same information at the same time, that brings a lot of transparency, a lot of clarity. They're seeing in real time, oh, that to do that was assigned to John isn't done, and John is looking at that same thing in front of everybody and saying, yeah, let me talk about what happened there, in the obstacles and opportunities, because I can see that as the team member here I didn't get that to do to the finish line. So that transparency and that clarity really helps in meetings. Everybody's seeing the same thing. It didn't get lost, right? It was captured
Mm,
last meeting, it's in front of us again, and we're all talking about it in real time. I think that's a huge benefit of a software like Bloom Growth. And the dashboards, like you're pulling up your KPIs, and yes, you could talk about revenue, but when you get to see maybe 4 weeks back that it was yellow and it remained yellow for 2 weeks and you went green, that's a bit of a boost to the team. Or you're looking
mhm.
at it and it was green, moved to yellow, went to red, and now you're going, we need to have a real discussion here because that visual,
Uh-oh.
yeah, the visual from the technology is really kind of giving the team a great clarity and understanding that there's something here that needs to be touched on. So technology and meeting management becomes a super helpful tool to allow the team to
Yeah.
be productive.
Well, and you brought up the point of, these types of software are meant to work on the business.
Mhm.
And then you'll have other tools that are for working in the business, right?
Correct.
I
Yep.
have
Correct.
seen so many times where a well-meaning team will delegate tasks and then each person has their list of tasks,
Mhm.
but the group does not have it, right? So
Yeah.
the power of the transparency of it all living in one platform where everybody on the team gets to see it. So none of those tasks can get, just sort of disappear.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen that over and over. So what are some common pitfalls, common mistakes leaders should watch out for when running meetings?
Yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls, right? Some people will call, death by meetings. So too many meetings, right? Way too many meetings are happening, and that causes a lot of problems because you're just getting fatigued. You're meeting so often, so frequently that the team is just really just starting to get fatigued from those meetings when every problem is being addressed with a meeting instead of just a direct action. You're taking away the benefit of being a leader, of how you can get a team to build their capacity and their ability to really solve problems in real time, because every time a problem comes up you say, well, let's have a meeting about that. And instead of just taking a direct action and saying, this is how we're going to solve this right now, let's make this happen. And then as you move forward, you can track that and see what's going on. And maybe eventually you need to bring that to a meeting to give a report on that direct action that was taken. But that can happen as well. Lack of follow through becomes a problem in meetings. You have these
Mhm.
meetings, You're all talking for 2 hours. You walk away, you come back next week, and nobody knows what everybody was supposed to do from that 2-hour meeting last week. And so they fell because nobody tracked it. Nobody's holding anybody accountable to the meeting that you held. And sometimes those meetings they're really expensive. If you think about your top people, the top leaders that you're paying in your company, sitting around a table for 2 hours, that's an expensive couple hours. And to just come
Absolutely.
back the next week and nobody remembered what they were supposed to do and there's no accountability, that's a huge pitfall, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, I think the other one would be there's just no room for input. Maybe the meeting is being held and there's a really strong presence in the room, and they become unproductive because that strong presence is just not allowing each team member to be heard because there's not a system of, okay, let's move to you. What is some of the your feelings on or thoughts of what the root cause is here, and allowing every team member to really jump in. And that's a part of kind of the framework that we have is you're allowing a robust discussion to happen. And some meetings can be really locked down and just no room for input. You got one guy just talking the whole time, calling the shots, and everybody walks away almost having put no word in at all during that whole time.
That's yeah, the common one, the leader monologue.
Hmm.
Uh, so aside from like too many meetings, the power of the priority pulse meetings, right? And
Hmm.
it's the it's in the name, the pulse.
Hmm.
It's the heartbeat, it's the living heartbeat of the business.
Yep.
It's how it pumps blood to the arteries. It tells, the team this is what's most important, and it
Hmm.
happens on a regular cadence. Ideally, you don't need to have any additional meetings during the weeks. The departments will have their meetings,
Yeah. Potentially. Yep.
um, but you know that okay, next week on this time, from this time to this time, it's timed
Hmm.
out, starts on time, ends on time. Like, we are going to go through this and we will discuss it in detail, find the root of the problem, and solve it,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
You don't need, oh, hey, let's, meet on Thursday for 30 minutes to hash out some other random thing.
Mm.
Bring it to the meeting,
Yeah.
right? Add it to the list. Allow the whole team to discuss it. Um, the lack of the follow-up you mentioned, and we talked about that. Like, you have to have a clear way, whether you use a software like the Bloom Growth software or
Hmm.
some other software that shows clearly that the entire team has access to who's responsible for what for that week
Yep.
or that quarter, um, so that there's no hiding.
Hmm.
And then room for input. This goes back to communication channels, right? Open
Hmm.
communication and the structure of the meetings, starting with the check-ins and the headlines and stuff, humanizes the participants, the
Hmm.
key leaders.
Hmm.
But we're not trying to say we're turning into like a huggy lovey family or something like this, but we're humanizing everybody.
Correct.
We all
Yep.
have, kids at home or,
Hmm.
you know, husbands, wives at home. And it allows you to kind of like, okay, right.
Yep.
This is not a robot.
Yep.
Um, but also maybe touch briefly on some of the tools that we use
Hmm.
um, to create open communication.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times the the biggest thing in a meeting when you're in the bigger part of the meeting and what we refer to as obstacles and opportunities, you'll ask the person who brings a certain obstacle to the table or an opportunity to the table will be asked, can you state what that particular obstacle or opportunity is in a short sentence? that allows us to understand where you're coming from or why you view it as an opportunity or an obstacle. And so it's using this sense of like uh, analyzing, right, discussing it, and then making this decision at the end of it. So every time you're in this discussion, everybody's walking through these three steps of stating what's going on and analyzing, is that really the opportunity that we're discussing here? Okay, he said that that was the opportunity. What do you think, John? What do you think, Frank? Right? And moving it across until you really dig down and you say, okay, I think we really now are here at really what this opportunity is about. Let's move on to now discussing it. And you give it back to the person who, gave it to you. And you say, okay, John, now that we feel like we're really locked in here and we understand it, then go ahead now and let's discuss it a little bit further. Have some
Right.
open discussion about it.
I wanted
And
to
then,
kind of go
yeah.
back a little bit to the identification, right?
Mhm.
And number one, like you love like the peeling the onion, right? And keeping the open communication. But then as far as the identifying what the real root
Mhm.
of the problem is and some
Mhm.
of the tools like the 5 whys
Yep.
of being able to go down. Other things I have seen in effective meetings is like a type of role play where
Mhm.
somebody states the problem that they're having and then allowing the other team members to say, if this was my problem, this is what I would think, we could do.
Mhm.
And then move around so that everybody gets a chance to kind of say what they think the root problem is.
Yeah. Agreed.
But
Yep.
but ultimately, the person that it was assigned to, there's no discussion of like, "Oh, you should do this." It's,
Mhm.
"Hey, if this was mine, this is what I would do." Done, move to the next person. And then ultimately, when it comes back around to the person it was assigned to, now it's, "Okay, I've got feedback from 5, 6 people, and now I have more data to
Mhm.
base my decision on." But ultimately, it's their responsibility. They should decide how to attack that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, now
Yeah,
go
which
back
is
to like the
yeah.
discuss part,
Yeah,
right?
which is like you said, I mean, you're discussing it, you're going around, and the reason for that is you got all these great minds at the table, and you're like you said, you want more information, you want more data, you want more, input and a lot of feedback so that you can say, okay, now I'm seeing this clearly. This opportunity I brought to the table, it's really clear to me now. So, given what everybody's saying and some suggestions here, I'd like to move to solve this. And here's how I'm gonna resolve it. I'm gonna lock a to do down in the next 7 days. I'm gonna do X, and that will move the needle here. Um, there's a process too. If there's too many potential solutions, then the leader of that meeting becomes that what we refer to as the tiebreaker, right? If
Mm,
John thinks this is the solution and Frank says it's not, and this is the solution, well, we have a system in place that makes that meeting still productive, which goes back to the person leading it and says, as the tiebreaker, this will be the solution that we knock out. John, let's have you tackle that to do, and let's move this forward, right? So
right.
I think those are
So
really important parts and tools like the 5 whys, like you said, and
yeah.
this process of getting everybody's feedback through identifying, discussing, and solving
Mm,
is pretty important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Identify, discuss, solve, right?
Yep. That's right.
IDS. Um, and then when it comes to the solving section and you're choosing what to do, some of the other things are the start, stop, continue, right? Going to
Mhm.
start doing this, stop doing this, and
Mhm.
continue doing more of this, right?
Yep.
To align with the solution. Because again, we're trying to keep fires from happening,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Those are those things that really move the needle. Um, So, I mean, do you have anything else that you want to add to this? Do you have any wins that from previous clients that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, I think again, what we're trying to really say here is that there is a formula out there. There is a sense of formula that you can master meetings and make meetings really productive. And a lot of times when coaching clients, they don't they don't see the initial value of the time that you spend here. This is one of the first things we do right out the gate when we engage. The first day is talking through how to start to make meetings productive, because in our opinion, that's where you get the most value. Is if you're going to come together, that's where you're going to get the traction. And so I've seen with a handful of the different companies that we've coached where they've really started to see the value of what it looks like to come together and have some type of framework and tools to get into this meeting and tackle the issues that they're facing or the obstacles that they're facing. So one in particular was going through a crazy amount of rapid growth. They were just really going fast. And I think a lot of people would hear that and say, well, that's amazing. Like, why would they need you? They're growing
Hmm.
amazingly fast. The
Yeah.
problem is sometimes growth is what can kill a company faster than just being stagnant. Growth can get away from
How
you.
so? How
It,
so?
it, it can get away from you to where you didn't build the right systems to handle the growth. And so things start to fall apart. Maybe the product that you were providing starts to not hit the market as well. You're not delivering as well. The quality starts to drop because you don't have the process to handle the growth that is coming in.
Hmm.
Um, the processes of customer service aren't robust enough, so you're not answering questions as much, and people are starting to get really frustrated or dissatisfied with the experience that they have with your company. So managing growth can be really a complicated thing and can be what actually brings a company down in a lot of ways. And so this particular company was experiencing that, growing really fast. They needed to get departments established. That's a problem as well. Like the HR department was just not established fast enough. They're bringing on employees to handle the growth, but not onboarding them effectively enough. And turnover was going out the roof. And so they're spending a lot of money on onboarding and hiring. These were a lot of the different things that they were seeing overall. And we could kind of keep going. But ultimately, the meeting the meeting framework that we provided them and coached them on started to really help them slow it down, stop saying yes to everything, really prioritize what are we going to do in the next 90 days. Let's meet every week. Let's prioritize those goals. Let's not say yes to everything so that we don't overwhelm our team. And they became a lot more efficient and the team was a
Yes.
lot happier, and they made the progress they needed there.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to go back to the overused term like systemize.
Mhm.
There's a lot of emphasis these days on like processes and things. And the meetings
Mhm.
have a process.
Yes.
Even the implementation of the
Mhm.
framework
Mhm.
has a process.
Exactly.
Um, so I mean, it just seems, yeah, meetings,
Yeah.
common sense, right? You should have meetings. But rarely do you find teams that are having like really quality, effective meetings. So hopefully this solves some of that for you guys.
I think, and to maybe add some more context to what you're saying, there's to make an effective meeting, we talked about that. We need say we just talk about KPIs, key performance indicators.
Mm,
Companies that we've coached, you walk in the door, you say, "Hey, where's your key performance indicators?" Like, I don't know. We sometimes talk about numbers, sometimes we don't. Okay, what do you want to work on? I don't know what to work on. Well, what industry are you in? Well, we make a product. Okay. Well, if you're making a product, what do you need to see every week to say that you're on track of making a great product? So the process of even getting to the point where you can come in every week and talk about a KPI that matters is where a coach guides you through that process and says,
mhm.
this is what this looks like to actually get to the point where you have KPIs in your meeting. And then 90-day
Yeah.
priorities. Some teams don't even know how to make a goal for 90 days, and they take on, there's processes to that, like you said. You can't have 13 goals in a 3-month period. You're not going to succeed. You're going to fail,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So the coach is really getting the team to prioritize and say, maybe it's only 5 that we should focus on. But to get to
Mm,
that point isn't an easy road, and the coach is facilitating that. And by the time you're done with that process, you now have a meeting that matters, and you can come in and
right.
do the priority pulse every week, and you're making that progress, right? So it's not as easy as just hearing check-in and headlines and KPIs and 90-day. There's a lot of work, and of course, we're always willing to help, companies get to that point. So,
Right. Awesome. Well, um, thanks for tuning in to the Company Acceleration Podcast. Today, we explored the formula for turning meetings into results driven powerhouses by
hmm,
setting clear objectives, using structured agendas, and leveraging tools like the Priority Pulse meetings. You can transform how your team collaborates and executes. So, if you all enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. And for more insights, visit us at companyxceleration.com. You can also see us here if you're interested in learning more. And so, until next time, keep scaling smarter.
thank you.